All right, so here we are. Another session with Cheryl and Larry having conversations. And it's been a little while since we've had one of these podcasts. But we're back at it here. And I think life happens, things happen. And I think, Cheryl, there might have been some stuff going on in your neck of the woods that might have uh, to deal with, I guess, for lack of a better wording, that might have led us to delaying a little of this practice. So, but I think it's a really great conversation piece and something that could help others in discussing.
Absolutely. And if there's one thing I believe in is sort of like being vulnerable and sharing kind of our, the ups and downs of life as, people out there in the world trying to make stuff happen is important, right? Because like if we only show the good side of things, like it just sort of isn't conveying the truth, and it's the ultimately doesn't help people who, because the reality is no matter what, their their life is a roller coaster, and sometimes you're going to be in a dip, and that was definitely what I experienced. Like it was a precipitous dip and unexpected, and we can get into that. um and but it was a little bit, yeah, it took me off guard, so it took some work to kind of get claw my way out
Mhm.
out of the pit, as it were. But I did, and I think a lot of good lessons for me, and I think a lot of good sort of rich conversation starters, and hopefully things that would be helpful for others too, as we start to shift, right? Like this, we're in this period, like, oh, I had my first dinner party, and
Mhm.
went to my first business meeting in a hotel like lobby yesterday, at the
Yeah.
Palace Hotel in San Francisco. I don't know about you, like Dreamforce wise, but just I've spent so many hours in that hotel having meetings,
Hmm.
so it was kind of fun to be back there again yesterday.
Well, that's an interesting point that you're bringing up. As you were talking, um, you know, knowing you and hearing about what you've had gone on outside of just what we've all dealt with, right? With the pandemic and just that, plus a lot of political stuff going on, and just a world of what seemed to be in chaos is enough to make someone unhealthy, um, depressed, struggling, right? Struggling for some kind of vibrancy in their life. Throw in a new role, a very, very senior role, right? An executive role that is going to require you to kind of step into a vulnerable place, right? Because you're engaging with new people and new challenges and all that stuff. Um, being a mom, and then also dealing with just the regular day to day of what is your uniqueness, right? So, kudos to you to getting through the storm. Um, but and I want to hear more about this. But interestingly enough, one of the challenges that we're all kind of facing right now too with this is opening things up is going to impact our schedules in a way that maybe we got accustomed to having a little more time back to ourselves,
Yeah.
right? So, you're always in control of your discipline of the things that you do. So when you had all this, time, maybe not traveling or going places, if you chose not to use Wiley, that's on you. But there was a real opportunity for you to do some stuff. People got an opportunity maybe to work out more during this, and so now all of a sudden we're opening up and we're going back to things, and now that's adding another wrinkle into life, right? So I am curious kind of how all that merged together and how maybe some of that aspect impacts yourself, right? The fact of all these new things now that are coming back, and what that journey looked like for you. What were the key things that you could summarize without maybe getting into too specifics that you felt were the challenges, and then
Mhm.
what were what you found to be the solutions for getting through it?
Yeah, so what's interesting is like all those things you described, right? They've been in these sort of challenges, and this backdrop has been a part of all our lives for a year and a half. And I was managing, and this was like a part of all our other sort of conversations we've had over the year, is like the way I've been able to kind of stay above water through it all is by having discipline around all these practices, right?
Mhm.
And that's what's allowed me to sort of show up with every day for every day with energy, with vitality, right? And that was my goal. And I'll be honest, I was feeling maybe a little bit arrogant about, oh, I got this. I'm a year and a half in, and like so far so good. Yeah, some moments, right? Some moments along the way, but generally speaking, I've been, I've sort of never worked out more, never been more focused on my health than during this time. Like that's what I use the extra time for, was just like digging into like health and
Mhm.
well-being and lifespan, health span in in many ways, both from a learning education standpoint, but also sort of implementation of things. So here I am sort of chugging along, and really it all was precipitated by, I went away for spring break, and didn't sleep well, like new bed, uncomfortable bed, too bright, like all the, too warm, my bedroom is a cave. It is like dark and cold and wonderful for sleep. And of course, like, yeah, this is going to happen when you go on vacation. The Airbnb we were at just didn't have, or um, it wasn't even Airbnb, it was a VRBO. Um, didn't have, didn't have all that, right? So it started off with just disrupted sleep, and then it quickly became this thing of that it just exacerbated itself. So we all, like, we know, but at this stage, right, so how foundational sleep is, right? And so, and I
Mhm.
know that, and I have very good sleep hygiene and sleep etiquette, as they say, and know a lot about, what to do to kind of make sure I have good sleep, when to cut off caffeine, doing sort of getting out in the sun in the morning, all of these things, working out. So, but what had happened was, because I had this sort of night after night of like poor sleep, I was just, and then I know so much about how important sleep is. It was like I was spiraling.
Mhm.
So I would go to try to sleep. I can't sleep. I need sleep. Can't sleep. Need sleep. Wake up in the night. Can't sleep. Need to sleep. And it just became, I was so utterly exhausted. I couldn't nap. I couldn't sleep. And then it all unraveled. And so the I kind of knew this instinctively, that all of these practices are what have allowed me to kind of, you know show up for life in the way I want to show up. And but I saw very clearly, when those are not happening, it all falls apart. Like, I just very quickly, it just, I was, everything was harder. I was much less resilient. I became depressed. There were, it was like a ripple effect, right? um because if you're not sleeping, if you're exhausted, it's like you can't work out in the way you want to work out. Like, it was all kind of, it all just, became a thing. And so it was jarring, and it was a struggle. And then, but my approach to these things is just like, like, what, okay, I know I have good sleep etiquette, but what's next? What do I need to do? And I tried a bunch of things, and we can get into that, but I'm going to give you a moment to see if you have anything to say about any of that.
The biggest question that comes to mind is, when you got back from the trip, did you lean into the discipline of your normal routine? So, being very focused on, I'm not sleeping good. Well, how do I make my sleep better? Meaning, oh, I'm going to try some teas at night, or I'm going to try a supplement, or I'm going to go to bed a little extra early tonight. What about the rest of your day? What about the workout regimen? What about all those things? Did you pull back on those things, or did you kind of stick to that schedule to keep things going?
I stuck to it. I did. Like, even if it wasn't the best workout or the most satisfying workout, because I was tired, I still got myself out and got a run in, right? So my little mantra is, when in doubt, work out, because even if it's not pretty, I'm gonna feel good when it's done. So practically speaking, especially in that first week, one of the things I did is, like, I let my boss, the CEO, know, I let my colleagues know, hey, oh, I'm struggling right now. I'm not able to sleep. It's causing some issues. I work mostly with an East Coast team on the West Coast, so a lot of my meetings were really early. So I went in and like, and everyone was cool about this. I rescheduled early meetings, moved them a little bit later. I blocked off the morning because often I would have meetings starting at 6, 6:37. That's all well and fine if I'm getting to sleep at 9, 9:30 like I normally do and sleeping through the night. Not fine with what was going on, right? It was just like if I managed to fall asleep, it was like 4, and then you don't want
Mhm.
your alarm going off and waking
Right.
you up. So everyone was super understanding about that. So that was the first thing I did was like, there's no reason, it, it's all, yeah, I'm happy to accommodate an earlier schedule. There's a lot of benefits for me. I'm done earlier. I get a nice little break in the afternoon where I can go do outdoor stuff. So I'm happy with that schedule. But at that point I was like, I need to get the sleep correction happening. So everyone
Mhm.
was on board with that. And I didn't hide it, right? So that was one of the topics that I thought about a lot during that time is like, when people are, if someone's sick, right? If you got COVID or if you hurt your back or if any number of these physical issues, hey, I'm sick. I need some time off or I need to do this to take care of myself. Da, 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 that's fine. It's a lot harder still these days to talk about I'm not doing well, in a different way, right? It's still physical, but it's physical, mental, and
Right.
there's still stigma around that. We know that. So part of what I felt like the right thing to do as a leader was to be transparent without being, without kind of taking it too far, but transparent enough so that people know that it's okay, right? It's okay to like if you're suffering burnout. I was just reading an article about burnout and it was definitely the symptoms of that. It was exacerbated by just circumstance, right? Like I couldn't
Mhm.
sleep many days in a row and then it just like it took a lot of work to get out of that. But um, but that those are symptoms of burnout, right? So if you can be transparent about it and sort of and also talk about how to kind of recover from it, I think it's really important because a lot of people are experiencing it or gonna experience it, and we shouldn't feel ashamed of it, and we should help each other get through it so we can get back to our full capacities, right?
Mhm. Yeah. So my question that I had really just is about the understanding and awareness that I think we are trained and conditioned that where there is pain, you need to solve for that
Mhm.
pain and
Mhm.
not look at it from a holistic perspective, right? As you said, uh, a bad workout basically is better than no workout. Well, I would argue and say that's not true. I would say that um, if your body is not functioning right, no workout is doing way more than a bad workout. Matter of fact, the bad workout could be hurtful to you. Um, that is a really hard thing to do because when you build discipline into your life and you figure that out and you now all of a sudden are motivated um, to do those types of activities for yourself, it's very hard to take a break. Um,
Yeah.
and it's very hard to also take a break, most importantly, during what is a normal routine. You can schedule a vacation, be like, well, I'm taking off a week. And psychologically, you're like, well, I deserve that. And you can come up with the reasons to not work out for that week when you're on vacation. I see many people when I go on vacation, that's not a thing. They're out running 20
Yeah.
miles, right? Like I see people doing that, right? Um, but what I think people forget is that there are a lot of factors, a lot of complex things going on in our bodies that need to be given an opportunity to rest, right?
Yeah.
For the sake of, you know, sleep's not good. Well, could that be a hydration problem? Could that be a blue light problem? Could that be uh, just a, um, I don't know, like a sun problem, not getting enough sun, right? To indoors. People can get insomnia from that, right? Too much blue light, not being out in the sun enough, right? Your mitochondrial, your cell function is just not working to its
Yeah.
to its proper, and it could just throw your body out of whack. Or it could be something with your diet. Your diet could be messing with some stuff in your body, right? Because our circadian rhythms, work in a specific way, right? Everything's seasonal, right? And that kind of ties to the holistic in nature, right? Needing rest just as much as you need to work out, right? So not being able to sleep is an indicator of a system breakdown. And you got through it, which is awesome, right? There's a lot of challenges with what you went through, which is I'm having trouble sleeping. It's not that, hey, I came down with a bacterial infection. Like,
Yeah.
that's something I can say I'm going to take time off for. Oh, I'm not sleeping good, right? And it's like, well, I can't stop my schedule.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's a little
you were
harder.
willing to be vulnerable and say those things and be able to tweak some stuff, which sounds like it helped get you out. But what I think the message that everyone should really understand is that when something is going on and there's a symptom of something showing front and center, it's normally not stemming from that one thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So your sleep probably was factored by other things that were going on. And that's what happens in all of life, right?
Mhm.
And we lose sight of things like, I'm sitting here with my water, right? If you don't focus on it, if you're not disciplined with those things, you will become dehydrated. If you're dehydrated, the water can't do what it's intended to do, which is to take all this energy that's coming into your system from the sun and the food and all that stuff and make all the chemical reactions that need to happen in your body to operate function and properly function, right? So it's really about sometimes like, all right, now I got to put my scientist hat on, but not just focus on how do I go to bed early, just focus on the sleep, but also look if there's been any other
Yeah.
changes in the pattern that could impact it, right? And I don't know, there might not have been, it just might have, you went about it in a good way, so it might have just taken maybe a little bit longer. Maybe if you took 2 days off, could have
Yeah,
solved
who
it. I
knows?
don't know, right? But
Well, let me
um,
tell you a little bit about sort of what ended up happening because it was interesting because it definitely felt like this sort of circumstantial, situation around disrupted sleep from being on vacation and not having an optimal sort of setting for sleep. Um, Sort of was the precipitated it like very sort of specific, and then this like exhaustion set in and anxiety around being exhausted. So one of the and then what was interesting too is I did end up with with sort of physical repercussions, and that was back pain. And that was definitely something easier to talk about, right? I
right,
made appointments to both get uh what's that? The release therapy, sort of really deep massage, as well as
deep
chiropractic.
tissue.
Yeah, it's something trigger release. Anyway, I'll figure it out and it'll come to me, I'm sure. And I also started getting I was and I want to save this for later too because I feel like it was the next level. There was like initial, which is like addressing the wound almost, right? If you think of that equivalent, and then there was the healing process after. Um, but initially the thing that I found really helpful for like that initial kind of emergency care, if to use that metaphor,
Mhm.
was I use Insight Timer a lot, and I found this insomnia course that uses uh, the tapping
Mhm.
and remind me of it's yeah I'm like forgetting the
Uh,
acronym. I'll have to look
yes,
it up. I
yes.
should have.
I've practiced
EFT,
that. Yes,
emotional freedom
EFT.
technique. Yes.
Yes, yes. There you go.
And this particular course was specific for insomnia, specific for having trouble getting sleep or waking up and not being able to get back to sleep. And waking up in the morning just exhausted, utterly exhausted. And with that course, it's like you conjure up just like, well, I didn't have to conjure up because I was so miserable, right? Because I
Mhm.
had another bad night's sleep, and I'm like having to start my day just feeling like a mess, so tired that I can't even nap. Like and so I went through and did all the tapping, and it definitely had an impact. Like by the end of doing the meditation and the tapping, the emotional intensity of the experience went away. So I found that to be really useful initially with just dealing with my anguish around sleep.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like it literally felt like I was just like, I am so tired and my life
Right.
is falling apart and why can't I sleep? And just helping to kind of take away that intensity. So that was number one. The massage was really good for just addressing that back pain because when I wasn't sleeping well, it was just I would wake up and just like my back was just in pain. So those were some of the initial things. And then I started to bring in, and that definitely helped, and things started to get better. I would have like, oh, a good night's sleep, and then maybe kind of go back to struggling a little bit. But I definitely felt like I had some tools, that new tools to deal with
Hmm.
that. And then I started to go more next level. I started to do blue blocker glasses at night. I hadn't adopted that yet.
Right.
And I adopted that. So there were some things like I have a lot going on with my sleep etiquette, but there were a few things. Uh, one of the one of the other things I did just to kind of help in those initial phases as well were sleep gummies. I mean, a lot of people in my in my network recommended, and they definitely helped. During those phases, just kind of like help you go into the evening in a nice chill state. Um, and then I started to see a chiropractor and that does atlas adjustment,
Hmm.
and in part because of the back stuff, but also just based on my what I've read and what I know, like, and I don't know a lot, and I'm hoping that you can explain a little bit better, but like this, our nervous system, right? It's all sort of interconnected. And if anything's out of whack, like it can definitely get in the way of our sort of that sort of optimal connection and being able to yeah, I don't even know how to explain it, but that's been going well as well. So I would say all of those things in combination have made a huge difference, and now I'm back, like I'm sleeping again,
Hmm.
and it's a beautiful, wonderful thing, and it's like I feel like myself again. But it was, the thing for me was just like how quick it all came apart.
Yeah.
Yes, it took work to get it back, but yeah, if and I just think about, gosh, if people aren't, prioritizing sleep, because I see some folks out there struggling in my world and network, if they're not prioritizing great sleep, like I get it. Like, yeah, I don't know how people are doing it. you know?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, you just described one path to healing,
Hmm.
which is an holistic approach. And um, when you come out the other side of it, you now have all this new knowledge and awareness for yourself to help you go forward.
Yeah.
Um, the other path, which unfortunately I think a lot of people do, is they will, get to a point where they're not sleeping, and they'll go and they'll be like, well, what do you do? Well, I can take a Tylenol PM,
Yeah.
right? And that'll knock you out, right? That will. And so you'll go to sleep, but now you're taking basically a drug, right?
Yeah.
To do it. Well, what happens? Well, oh, I slept good last night. Well, that was because of the Tylenol PM. So now all of a sudden you get, the next thing you know, someone's taking Tylenol PM every single night.
Yeah.
Well, what impact is that happening on the rest of your system, right? How is that affecting your liver function and your
Yeah.
kidneys and all that stuff, right?
Or worse yet,
So
they're going to something stronger, which we know has a ton of side effects, right?
right, and that's what ends up happening, right? Because
Yeah.
eventually, after a while, you're trying to mask the actual, you're treating the symptoms, and you're not treating the foundational problems. And as a result of that, those treatments tend to, you become numb to them, right? Because your body is so wonderful in what it does, right?
Mhm.
Um, so, I mean, there's a lot to that we could do conversations about many things that stem from everything you went through. One being you took the longer road and the tougher road to get there, but it's worth the effort. I mean, that's 100%. I mean, Atlas, you know, the I had my Atlas done in September. I think I've mentioned this on previous conversations. My Atlas was off in 9 centimeters and 11 centimeters in two different directions.
Wow.
Um, And that was stemming from an injury probably when I was 9 years old, right? Uh, I can't tell you how the pain that I was dealing with was gone, how my head feels lighter
Mm.
as a result of it. And it was a medical surgical procedure. It was no cracking, there was no nothing. It was
So subtle. It's so
so
subtle,
so
right?
so subtle, and I'm a different person as a result
That's
of it.
right.
I'm much more healthier. I'm much more vibrant, and all these other things are happening. And I think that at the end of the day, we have to go back to listening to our gut, which
Yeah.
is what you did, right? Um, there was a part of you that said, even though it might have been fearful, that I just got off a vacation and I'm struggling sleeping. Do I say something? Do I not say something? No, there was a part of you that said, say something. And then there's there was that willpower to say, you know what? I need to do that. Why? Because there's it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. And I know that I'm doing myself a good service and the company's a good service by doing that. Um, then you decided to not take and cut corners. You decided to dive into non high impact approaches to fixing things, or go buy some technology device that's probably emitting EMF, EMF radiation on you, that's making, at the end of the day, making it worse anyway. So I commend you for that, because most people don't do those types of things. And I think one of the key lessons out of this conversation is that, in addition to realizing that your body is a complex system, uh, it needs attention in many ways. And that when something is not working right, and you sleeping is a product of your body, like, your body needs to recover, it needs to go through that, so it needs to rest, right? And if it cannot rest, then that is a problem. That problem needs an approach that looks at it from many angles, not just one,
Yeah.
right? And so you need an holistic approach to everything that you do. You need to listen to see what's right for you, right? And then you test the waters, and then
Yeah.
you come to your own conclusions and have a more of a bespoke approach to your well-being, right? You took control of your health. You went out, you explored, you did the things. You didn't just take someone's word for it, and you got out the other side of it, and that's amazing. And I think at the end of the day, the one key thing is that you listen to your gut on all of those things, and we need to double down on that, because I think we're losing our sense of that messenger that's inside of us, that tells us to do something, but then something else is stopping us,
Yeah.
right? That ego tells us to stop and not listen to our gut. um and it and I it's kind of a shifting gears of points, but I do think a recent story that I have is kind of interesting in how someone listening to their gut can be so impactful on their health. Um, I was recently running with a buddy of mine, and uh, a woman had stopped us and turned to my buddy and goes, "Hey, Joe, do you remember me?" And it's like, "Yes." And it's like, "Oh, I wanted to tell you, it's been bugging me. I wanted to apologize for how badly I treated you uh, 9 years ago." And it was in relation to him coaching her daughter's soccer team.
Oh, wow.
And she was upset with her playing time and the positions that he was putting her in. And he's like, "Oh, it's totally fine. No, you didn't need to do this." And she goes, "No, no, no. I, you have no idea how much this helps me, that I had to
Mm.
get this off my chest." Right. And a few minutes later, when we finished our run, Joe turned to me and was like, "Man, that made my day. That was awesome." And I could see the vibrancy of him. Like, he just had a jolt of energy given to him from someone. And we ended up seeing that woman a couple days later running again, and it was,
Hmm.
a smile and a wave and hello, which we all know what hugs and smiles and whatnot do for us energetically. But she had to have had this when she saw him, something triggered inside that had an instinct to do something. And she acted on it. And I think she's probably healthier as a result of it. Matter of fact, I
Yeah.
know she's healthier as a result of it. And here you are, same thing, right? You could have just ignored all this and just kept plugging away, and then something worse could have happened, right? You could have come down with some kind of sickness. You could have had, who the heck knows? I mean, that's what happens all the time. That's how cancer and all these other things end up happening eventually in life, right? You start now, and then 5 years later from now, you keep doing the same thing. You're not sleeping, and now it leads to other stuff. You make bad decisions with food, and you're
Hmm.
not drinking water, right? And then you mix in alcohol. Like, there's so many different things that go down. And now you have a disease that you can't say, hey, I need to chill with my schedule. No, I literally need to stop working because I need to go on disability, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what happens. But you listen to your gut to say, I need to address this. This is so important. Um, and a matter of fact, I'm going to put it out there to address it, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that was a little bit of a word
No,
vomit, but there's just like a
I love
lot
it.
going on with that story that I think also just some of the things that I'm seeing out there in the world, and the impacts of how just these little small gut feelings, these vibes that if you act on them, sometimes it's small, but other times they can have huge
Yeah.
impacts, right? And it may be a struggle, right? Because it was probably not an easy set of weeks and whatnot
Yeah,
that
no.
you
I
went through
mean,
for sure.
yeah, yeah. I that part of it's like I wanted to be clear. It's like I'm not at my best, you know. You're not going to see great behavior all the time, you know, when I'm in that state. I just yeah, there were a lot of kind of ripple effects. It wasn't great by any stretch. And that story is great, and it does dovetail into this like that sort of like next level of healing that's happening now that I've gotten, you know, I'm back sleeping and all of that again. What became apparent, right? Because this is just the fact. Like we can really fill our days with a lot, right? With our routines, a regimen, with our focus on health and fitness, and with our jobs. We have some pretty full days, right? So it's really easy to continue to like chug along and maybe some of these things, these little like emotional bags that we're carrying around, it's easy to kind of forget they exist, ignore them, just think of them as like, oh, they're, you know, just make life a little tougher, but you know, it just builds grit and resilience and strength. I mean, we can always sort of find a way to spin some of these things. But in that time when I was really not in a good place, when I was, you know, I was just this emotional fragility, a lot of these like things became very like they were flaring, right?
Hmm.
Because, you know, yeah, I just wasn't able to ignore them. And that was sort of exacerbating things. And in the moment, like kind of that metaphor I was using, like there had to be the emergency care done first, right, before the kind of real healing could begin.
Hmm.
I came out of that few weeks knowing like, okay, I need to deal with like I need to get rid of these emotional weights that I've been carrying around for years. And a lot of what's been keeping me doing that, it's like they're always in relation to other people and involve having to in some ways hurt other people, right?
Hmm.
Or what can feel like hurt. Um, and that's challenging. It's challenging. It's like this example, right? This woman was carrying for 9 years, like she like treated this person poorly, right? And like imagine that. And then she finally got to like cut that dirt and like drop that bag of emotional weight.
Right.
Not knowing what might have happened in the moment. Maybe, you know, he could have been like, well, whatever, yeah, you know, sort of responded negatively. I mean, it's rare, but
Yep.
we can imagine we can do what my therapist calls the negative prediction, right? Um,
Mhm.
and so that's the next phase. So coming out of like dealt with all the kind of physical things so I could get back on track and sleeping again. And I'm definitely, you know, able to approach my days with the kind of energy and vitality I want. But I recognize that it could be really easy for me to just keep going along with status quo and not deal with this stuff. But then what
Mhm.
happens the next time I run into like for, you know, I'm going to go on vacation again. I'm not always going to have a good bedroom.
Right.
You
Right.
know, and so That's this phase, right? So now I'm like, okay, I'm dealing with this stuff. I'm just dealing with it. Um, and it's like hard stuff for me to deal with. I generally I generally don't like to hurt others, and I generally try to take on too much. Um, because of that, right? So it's going to be hard for me, but I'm excited for it, right?
Hmm.
And I found
Right.
myself an accountability partner to keep me accountable to making it happen, right? Like I specifically with this new therapist was like, I need someone who's just gonna hold me accountable to making this happen, right? To doing the things and just sort of pushing through my sort of negative projections and predictions and fear of hurting people, of like that sort of, especially when you're in deep emotional relationship with people, like, that kind of conflict is very intense. It's not like a
Hmm.
work conflict or something where you can kind of be outside it a little bit, when you're talking about other individuals that you're known for decades and are in, really deeply connected with. It's like it's a lot harder to do. So anyway, that's the like it's kind of fun, right? Like I'm excited about when I'm talking with you about it. I mean, I'm not always excited about it, but yeah, that's the other thing. It's like it's easy, like I said, you can just be in the trance of life and kind of forget about this stuff until something happens. There's a precipitous event. Maybe it's like you get diagnosed with an illness and like and realize like, oh shit, I need to relook at my lifestyle, or it happens to a loved one, or whatever the case, or my
Yeah.
example of this circumstance around sleep. But you gotta be willing to hear that and then take action, right? It's easy to
100%.
ignore it.
Yeah, well, that's the word. I think that's the theme of this podcast is don't ignore the signs. I think that we've talked a lot about awareness,
Yeah,
um,
it's like the
and
foundation of everything,
it
isn't
is
it?
right. It's the foundation of it's my ABCs of life. It's the number one thing, which is awareness, right? And there's there's always something that comes right after awareness, right? So if you're not aware, you got to try to become aware, right? So that's like step one, and that sometimes can be hard. That's why I happen to have a therapist and a coach, is because
Yeah,
I that she helps me with my awareness, right? That's why I
yeah,
meditate. It helps me
yes.
strengthen my awareness skills. So I think we've accomplished a message that is rooted in the foundation of everything, which is you got to practice awareness. It's crucial for yourself. But I think a really key lesson is that what do you do with that awareness? And I think in your story, and I think in my little story, I think the point is do not ignore. You know, when you ignore signs, when you ignore symptoms, you miss opportunity. Right? It's either an opportunity to find bliss, find happiness, start a new career. How many times have we had moments where we want to engage in a conversation with someone, or someone's talking about something that interests you, but you don't engage because you're afraid, because you don't know enough about it, or you know whatever the case might be going on, the ego's chirping in your ear about at the time, that you don't act. And it's so small, right? Because there's a sign here that says I should act, and you feel this little uncomfortable fear plus excitement, and you just don't act on it.
Yeah,
Well, what could have transpired there, right? And so the same thing goes with symptoms, right? If you have a small symptom of something, back pain, can't sleep, you know profusely sweating, whatever little symptoms that come out. There are many, right, that are signs to potential things like skin infections and things like that. That people have all these autoimmune disease walking around, and they have these like little skin, uh, you know, infections going on. That if they address it now would be big.
yeah,
Big. It's it's not ignoring them. It's looking at them. And then what I think is the real key thing is don't let someone else tell you about you. Don't
yeah,
don't have someone tell you how to um, to learn, right? I think there was a Mark Twain quote. Actually, I think I heard it this morning. It was like, "Don't let your education block your um, block your learning."
Yeah,
I think it
that's
is.
awesome.
It's what I
Yeah.
think it's something like that. And the point of that is, don't take someone's word for it just because they said it's fact, right? Oh, I'm trouble sleeping. Well, I guarantee if you Googled how to fix sleep problems, there's 1,000 things out there. Some are really stinking bad for you, right? So I think what you did is you didn't ignore the symptoms. You were willing to put yourself out there to acknowledge them, right? Accountability too, right? Because
Mm,
also too, by saying something to your office, it's like, well, if I don't address this, then what am I
yeah.
doing, right? And then you took an approach of learning and practice more awareness to say, well, what's working for me, right? Is it a tapping therapy? It's a atlas, maybe it's chiropractic adjustment, maybe talking to a therapist, right? How much do emotions and events and something that could have triggered something that you saw passing someone that might have triggered something unconsciously that made you feel kind of crappy, that could have spiraled out of control. You took that approach, and at the end of the day you were able to get through it, and those were the core foundations of what you did, right? You practiced awareness, you didn't ignore the signs, and then you made your journey your own.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is something I think anyone who's listening to this can use for themselves, right? Because this isn't about X plus Y equals Z, right? Your N equals one is yours,
Mhm.
right?
So
You
true.
have tools, right? You have a process that you can go through, but that process has some foundational principles, but it's you that needs to go through it and learn it and then evolve. And I think at the end of the day, if you always do that, even if there's mistakes, even if there's failures, there's beautiful lessons and new knowledge that can now catapult you to the next thing, right?
Yeah.
And evolve in life. And then, right now, my last point here is that gut instinct that we might be at a point right now because we were so closed off and not interacting with people that we might have lost sight of some of those natural instincts, or wanting to engage in conversation, or getting back to giving someone a hug, or whatever the case might be of how things might have been, right? A year and a half of time is a long time, and you can get into some habits and turn into a bit of a hermit. I know I like that sometimes. I like to go kind of hide and
Yeah.
study and do all that kind of stuff. So listen to your instincts when someone asks you to go do something, or you're out there and engaging with someone, and someone brings up a conversation, or someone looks at you and you don't say hello. No, say hello, right? Do those types of things, rebuild those social interaction things, because you'll feed off that energy. That'll be good for you. It'll help your health, and it'll help strengthen listening to that gut instinct, and those signs that come for you, because they're very subtle, right? They're not something that slaps you in the face. It's typically disease and other stuff that slap you in the face, and the effort to get through that is much longer than listening to the subtle ones and maybe having to go through a couple of weeks of trial and error and this and the other. And but guess what? You come out more healthier at the end of the day, and probably
Yeah,
protect yourself
exactly.
from getting cancer now,
Yeah,
kind of thing,
exactly.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's interesting this next phase that we're all heading into, right? And I think that message is a really good one. And it's like you can't hear that quiet voice if you're not listening for it. And it's like important to hear it and then act on it and not just like ignore it, right? And I think we'd all be sort of better for that, for sure. I know yeah, I'm feeling that shift just having been getting out, and I've been getting out and doing things all along, but just more of those social things that were on hold a little. And I was feeling a bit resistance initially, but now really feeling like I'm starting to yeah, I'm open to it, and I'm enjoying this sort of new dimension of of things with
Right.
with in-person business meetings and things like that. It was a real joy yesterday, and it was a great conversation, and met another like-minded individual, very focused on lifespan, health span, and all of that. It was one of our company's investors. So it was such an enjoyable conversation, and I was so happy that, you know, I made that happen. Got on proper clothes, you know, got downtown, parked,
There you go.
parked in the garage, the whole bit. It was all worth it, you know.
Yeah. Well, and after being inside and not doing all that stuff for a while, I know I had that happen recently when I was planning on going to New York. Like there was literally a part of me that was like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
I don't want to
exactly.
go. Like, wait, what? Really? I gotta drive and like, ugh,
Yeah.
and you realize you're like, I was doing that once a week at least
Uh,
a year and a half
yeah.
ago. What is going on? Well, you get into your habits now. It's changed. So it takes just that little bit of willpower to be like, no, 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 get out there. So then when you get out there and you're interacting with people, we're social beings, right? Like we need to interact, and amazing things happen when we do that, right? So and it just feeds more vibrancy into our lives. And so when that ego is chirping at you saying no, 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 like don't do this, don't do that, I said no, you know what, that it's worth it. Let me just give it the old college try, and you'll find out at the end of the day you're feeling pretty good about some of those decisions when you listen to your gut, because more often than not, I can tell you, when I do that, I
Yeah.
always realize that it was the right thing to do.
Listen to your gut and take action. That's like the nut of it. So, and I know
Mhm.
we're at time. So it
Yes.
was lovely seeing you again, and let's not have it be so long. And next time I'll be in my beautiful spot in Maine, which
Well,
will be fun,
that's awesome. And
where we all
listen, this
started.
is this is good, right? Because why should we be getting on and talking and it's quasi not feeling right, right? I mean,
Mhm.
what kind of vibe and energy are we giving out there if we need time, right? It shows good prioritization. It shows
Yeah.
good stuff for you, and I think this was a good starting point to get back at it, and a good talk track for new ones to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
All right. Well, listen, Larry, have a good afternoon, and we'll chat soon.
you too. Be well.
All right. Ciao.